Well, first, congratulations, Madam Speaker, on your election, and thank you very much for inviting us to your office here at the U.S. Capitol, the Speaker's office. I must say you wasted no time in laying down a marker for President Bush. Shortly after you were sworn in your first speech to the Congress Speaker, you told him what the election meant to you and to Democrats. Let's listen to what you said.
Nowhere were the American people more clear about the need for a new direction than in the war in Iraq.
Then Friday, Madam Speaker, you and Senator Harry Reid, the Democratic leader in the Senate, sent a letter to the president in which you said, quote, "It is time to bring the war to a close," end quote. You warned the president that, one, sending more troops to Iraq is unacceptable to Democrats, and two, you said a phased withdrawal should begin in 4 to 6 months. I want to ask you first, you have talked to the president. Did he give you any indication that that is actually what he intends to do?
No, we haven't had this conversation with the president about the war in Iraq. In fact, we've had very little conversation with him on the subject. The letter that Senator Reid, Leader Reid, and I sent to the president is the most recent in a series of letters over the past many months asking to work together with him for a new direction in Iraq. The American people have spoken very clearly on the subject in the election, and my speech and the letter consistently say, Mr. President, we must make it clear to the Iraqi government that they are responsible for the security of the Iraqi people, that a plan, you must put forth a plan that indicates that to them, that also brings stability to the region and begins the serious, responsible redeployment of our troops.
All right. Well, Madam Speaker, second, what are you going to do if the president doesn't take your advice? What if he does announce that he is going to expand the size of the force in Iraq, as many are suggesting he's going to do?
Well, if the president chooses to escalate the war, which is contrary to, of course, the will of the American people, they have spoken on this subject, but even the advice of his own generals. In December, General Abizaid testified before the Senate that in his conversations with General Dempsey and with General Casey, they believe that adding more troops will not improve the situation there. And so he's not listening to the generals, the president isn't, and he's not listening to the American people. We, as their representatives, are trying to engage in dialogue with the president to find some common ground to reach an end to the situation. Now, let's be positive about the president's speech. We wrote this letter because we have heard that he is in consultation with his advisors about a course of action, and we wanted to indicate to him which course of action we could work together on.
So you've told him what you don't want to do, and that is to expand the size of the force in Iraq, even on a short-term basis. Right. But what if he decides to do that? What will be your action then?
If the president chooses to escalate the war, in his budget request, we want to see a distinction between what is there to support the troops who are there now. The American people and the Congress support those troops. We will not abandon them. But if the president wants to add to this mission, he is going to have to justify it. And this is new for him, because up until now, the Republican Congress has given him a blank check with no oversight, no standards, no conditions, and we've gone into this situation, which is a war without end, which the American people have rejected.
Now, let me ask you and make sure I understand exactly what you are saying, because up until now, Democrats have not been enthusiastic about using the ultimate weapon, and that is to cut off funding.
We won't do that.
But you will not vote any more money to expand the size of the force there? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying two things. We will always support the troops who are there. Mm-hmm. If the president wants to expand the mission, that's a conversation he has to have with the Congress of the United States. But there's not a carte blanche and a blank check to him to do whatever he wishes there. And I want to make a distinction here. Democrats do support increasing the size of our Army and by 30,000, the Marines by 10,000, to make sure we're able to protect the American people.
Enlarging the services overall.
Overall, in order to protect the American people against any threats to our interest wherever they may occur. That's different, though, from adding troops to Iraq. The president wants to escalate a war where his generals are telling him that the additional troops will not be effective, that they're easily digestible to have this number of troops go into Baghdad, and then again ignoring the strong message of the American people.
So at this point, the Democrats in Congress are not prepared to pay for or to fund an additional number of troops in Iraq.
We have to see what the president has to say. It's not an open-ended commitment anymore, but we will always be there to protect our troops and to support our troops. The burden is on the president to justify any additional resources for a mission. In our letter, we say to the president, as we have over and over again, you must change the mission to training, to fighting terrorism, to logistics, and force protection instead of combat. Our troops have done an excellent job. Every chance we get, we praise them for what they have done. But unless there's a political and diplomatic solution to match their efforts, their hands are tied behind their backs in order to end this. So the president is going to have to engage with Congress in the justification for any additional troops he may wish. But escalation of the war is opposed by the Democrats.
And is to be decided. In other words, no green light. He's going to have to stop at the intersection and see if the Democrats want to go along with this. And do you believe you would have the votes to stop him?
Well, let me say this. This isn't just about Democrats. I hope you noticed in my speech as the first woman Speaker of the House that when I talked about the war, that many Republicans were applauding, and when I talked about the responsible redeployment of our troops, a standing ovation pervaded throughout the House, not just Democrats. So this isn't just about Democrats. This is about the American people. They are watching to see what difference this election can make. The president ought to heed their message. We should not be obliged to an open-ended war.
So how would you go about that, Madam Speaker? Would you introduce legislation to simply cut off or to authorize on a case-by-case basis how the money is going to be spent in Iraq? How would you go about that? Or would you pass a resolution? What exactly would you do?
Well, we're expecting from the president a supplemental to come forward to support the war effort that is there.
A supplemental is Washington
talk for a bill that is outside the regular budget process, and that's a whole other issue. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that any time the president has sent these supplementals, the Republicans have just turned it around, sent the money with no questions asked.
And those days are over?
3 3/4, almost 4 years later, hundreds of billions of dollars. This war cost $1 trillion if it ended now, but more important than that, the lives lost, the casualties sustained, the lost reputation in the world, and the damage to our military readiness. For these and other reasons, we have to say to the president, in your speech that you're going to make next week or this week, we want to see a plan. We want to see a plan and a new direction, because the direction you have been taking us in has not been successful. So when the bill comes, the supplemental, as you say, Washington talk, it will receive the harshest scrutiny. What do we really need to protect our troops? What is there for an escalation? What is the justification for that?
Madam Speaker, you were saying to me something that has not been said here, and that is before, and that is that Congress, under your leadership and Senator Reid's leadership in the Senate, is prepared for the first time to use the power of the purse to change U.S. policy.
I would say, Bob, instead that Congress is ready to use its constitutional authority of oversight to question what is the justification for this spending. What are the results that we are receiving? The president likes to say that he's not going to follow the advice of politicians in Washington, but generals on the ground. The generals on the ground have said that the escalation, the increased number of troops going in to Iraq will not be effective.
Now, one of the things you said in the letter that you and Senator Reid sent to the White House was that we should begin a phased withdrawal in the next 4 to 6 months. How does that work? Is the president going to have to assure you that he intends to do that? And what do you think, perhaps more importantly, that would be the question, what do you think will happen in Iraq if indeed the president adopts the suggestions that you have made?
One of the benefits of oversight is that we can try to get the ground truth as to what is happening in Iraq now. The situation could hardly be worse, and our young people are losing their lives. So what we're saying to the president is, again, speak truth to the Congress of the United States, more importantly, to the American people. Let us stipulate to a set of facts of what the conditions are on the ground there. We know that our troops' presence there, our troops are targets there. Over 1 year ago, Mr. Murtha talked about moving us over the horizon with a serious, responsible redeployment of our troops. That's over a year ago. We are now saying, again, let us begin in 4 to 6 months. Many lives have been lost in that period of time. A tremendous impact on the budget of the United States. Again, loss of reputation in the world and damage to our military readiness. So what we want to know is, what are the facts? What are the results of the policies we have been pursuing? And what is the justification for the plan that the president will present?
The president would say, if we leave, we lose. Do you think that would happen? Do you think there would be complete chaos if we began to draw down troops in Iraq?
There is complete
what do you
chaos
see?
now.
All right.
There is complete chaos now. For 3.5 years, we've been on a course of action that has taken us in the wrong direction. We've just passed the 3,000 mark of lives lost in Iraq. How much longer can we sustain an effort where there is no plan? Where there is no plan to get the job done? The military has performed excellently, but there's no political and diplomatic plan to get the job done.
But
the administration's policy in Iraq has failed. It has failed. And it's a question of how much longer we sustain this failure. So when the president says we will have lost, we are losing in terms of achieving the goal of bringing stability to the region.
Do you believe that our security overall will be lessened, that we will be less safe if we leave Iraq?
Right now, the war in Iraq is harming our military readiness. That's why you see hawk leaders in the Congress, others perceived as hawks, distancing themselves from the president's policy. In order for our interests to be protected in our own country or wherever our interests are threatened, we have to have a strong military, and Democrats are committed to building the best possible military for the 21st century to protect our interests. Have no doubt about that.
All
and
right.
this war in Iraq is damaging our military readiness. So it is not making America safer, it is not making the region more stable, and we must have a new direction.
All right, Madam Speaker, we'll continue this conversation in just a moment. And we're back now with the new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi of California. Ms. Pelosi, President Bush said last week that he wanted to work with the Congress to balance the budget in 5 years. But he also rejected any tax increases, and obviously he's not in a mood to reduce spending on the war. Is it possible to balance the budget under those conditions?
Well, the war in Iraq and the tax cuts for the highest end people in our country make it difficult and challenging to balance the budget. There's no question. But we'd like to see what the president's version of a balanced budget is. He's never sent one to the Congress.
Can you do it without raising taxes?
I think you can put everything on the table. You can start by saying that there's $300 billion in taxes which are not collected in our country each year. Can you imagine that? You can probably start also with cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Congressman, now Chairman Henry Waxman has taken the lead on that issue as Chairman of the Government Reform Committee. Waste, fraud, and abuse, collect taxes that are not collected, close corporate loopholes. If you start there, you can find some money to make investments in education, which brings more money back into the Treasury than any initiative that you can name. the president's willing to join with us in fighting waste, fraud, and abuse, collecting the taxes, and closing the loopholes, we can start there.
President Bush seems to almost be daring Democrats to not fool with his tax cuts, to leave his tax cuts in place. Do you see it that way?
Do I think his tone is a daring one?
Not to make his tax cuts permanent, for example.
Well, I would certainly hope not. I hope that's not a dare here. What we'd like to do is come to the table, as I say, put all of our priorities on the table, join together in selecting them, the education of our children, access to health care, issues that we will have in the first 100 hours, reducing the cost of college education, et cetera. But again, we are committed to pay as you go, no new deficit spending. We passed that in our rules package on Friday, and we're very proud of that. We're committed to it.
But let's go back to taxes. Are you promising no new taxes for anybody?
No, I'm talking about tax cuts for many in the middle class. We've had tax cuts for small businesses to provide health insurance to their workers, R&D, making permanent and modernizing the research and development tax credit for small business. We're talking about helping families with higher education of their children with some kinds of tax credits.
More tax cuts?
We're talking about tax cuts for the middle class. And as we review what we get from, again, collecting our taxes and reducing waste, fraud, and abuse, investing in education, and in initiatives which will bring money into the Treasury, it may be that tax cuts for those making over a certain amount of money, $500,000 a year, might be more important to the American people than ignoring the educational and health needs of America's children.
So what you're talking about is you may have to raise taxes for some people in the upper income levels in order to cut taxes for some below them?
What we're saying is Democrats propose tax cuts for middle income families. And we want to have pay-go, no new deficit spending. We're not going to start with repealing tax cuts, but they certainly are not off the table for people making over $500,000 a year.
So they may see their taxes go up.
They may, but as I say, that's not where we'll begin. It's an option, it's not a first resort.
You introduced this ethics package,
Yes.
and from now on, people who get these pet projects that kind of sneak into the budget at the last minute, what they call these earmarks, they're going to have to put their names on them. What good will that do? Because mostly hometown congressmen are proud to have their names associated when they bring home the bacon to the people in the home district. How's that going to improve that situation?
Well, first of all, it will reduce the number of earmarks and it will reduce the cost to the taxpayer. Certainly any justifiable earmark project for the people back home is something that people will have to say, is this of national significance? We had criteria when the earmarks first started that you couldn't get funding for a project in your district unless it was of national significance, unless it could be a model for the country, or unless in a bipartisan way that people came from your state or your district to say, we need this water project, it's good for our environment, our economy, et cetera. So there was always a justification. It's interesting to me that the president is now talking about earmarks. He's been president for 6 years, largely with a completely Republican Congress, and the number of earmarks has exploded. It's just not right. I myself personally, I would do away with all of them. But if we're going to have some, they have to be justified, identified, and not special interest earmarks. That's where the big money is.
Would you favor an independent agency, a watchdog agency, to look into some of these things, put real teeth into these laws?
Well, ethics reform is only important if you have strong enforcement. And my goal as the new speaker is to make sure we restore the confidence of the American people in the Congress of the United States.
So you would support?
So I have spoken with Mr. Boehner, and we are going to work in a bipartisan way to look to how we can have an outside panel, or words to that effect, look at our ethics process. I don't know what the result of that will be, but I hope that it will be that we will have an outside panel. I think that would be important. I don't really think, it shouldn't have to be necessary.
But
Congress
the
should be able
tales to
do it
come,
this
but you support that in general?
Yes.
Let me ask you about being the first woman speaker. That was quite a scene. When you were sworn in, you called all the kids, your grandkids, the members' kids, to come up to the rostrum with you. Did you mean that to be a signal of a different kind of House?
Well, certainly a woman speaker, it represents change. And I've said it over and over in the campaign that I will receive the gavel, the speaker's gavel, from the hands of the special interest and into the hands of America's children. I was so thrilled. The children weren't shy. They all came running up, and I want our members to know that every action that we take in the Congress, we must do with an eye to our children and their future. We owe that to them.
Do you believe that as a woman, the first woman, that you will be held to a higher standard? I've heard some people go so far as to say if she's not successful, it will have an impact on candidates in the 2008 presidential election.
Now let me revolt out. I have absolutely no intention of not being successful. I'm ready for this job. The Democrats in general are ready to lead, prepared to govern, and determined to make the American people proud. We want to do so in a very bipartisan way, to bring civility back to the debate in the Congress, to build fiscal soundness into what we do, and to do so in a way that it meets the highest ethical standard. So my colleagues have elected me to be Speaker of the House, not Speaker of the Democrats. And I'm going to do this in a way that will reflect that.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for having us in today, and the best of luck. I'm sure we'll be talking down the road.
I look forward to it, and thank you.
We'll be back with a final word in just a minute. We welcome to the studio this morning the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House when the Democrats had the majority there, Nancy Pelosi. Ms. Pelosi, thank you so much for coming. You know, the unemployment figures came out and they were worse than expected, as you know. Unemployment actually ticked up to 9.1%. But this was just part of the story, a series of numbers that have been really, really bad lately. The number of new jobs created, 54,000, far fewer than expected. Home prices hit a new low in the first quarter of the year. Home sales are down again. Consumer confidence is down, and gas and food prices are up. I have to say, Congresswoman, many of the experts thought the recovery would be well underway by now, but it looks like we're going backwards now, that we may be on the verge of a double-dip recession here. Do you fear that's what's happened?
Well, I think we have to take a careful look at those figures to see. The unemployment numbers are obviously very disturbing. Are they an anomaly, as some people suggest, because of the disasters in the South and the Midwest and the rest, or is this something systemic that we have to accommodate in a different way? But all of it translates into hardship for America's middle class, and they're feeling it very, very severely.
You know, Mitt Romney launched his presidential campaign in New Hampshire, and he said basically the president has made the economy worse. Let's just listen to what he said.
This is now his economy, and what he has done has failed the American people. And the borrowing and the spending and the $1.6 trillion deficit, these numbers are his. They're on his back, and it's why he's going to lose.
So aren't you and the Democrats going to have to come up to an answer to that?
Well, first of all, I don't stipulate to that set of facts that Governor Romney just said. Because the fact is that this deficit came to us largely from President Bush. But it's no use going there. We have to go forward. It's a question of what is the president and what are those who aspire to be president going to do about the future to create jobs, good-paying jobs. What are they going to do about the education of our children, the security of our seniors, the strengthening of the middle class, reducing the deficit? But the president's been there 2.5 years. I mean, why hadn't he done that yet? Well, he's done a great deal of it. I think if he hadn't taken the actions he did, that the situation would be worse. He pulled us from the brink of a financial crisis, from an economic crisis, and now we have to dig out of a deep debt. And we have to also make it clear that we're not getting into this situation again.
You were talking in a kind of a different way when unemployment went to 5% under George Bush. What you said then, that Americans are struggling with skyrocketing energy prices. Gas was only $3 a gallon then. And you said this morning's, this is January 4th, 2008, this morning's job report confirms what most Americans already knew. President Bush's economic policies have failed our country's middle class. I mean, aren't Republicans entitled to say, you know, if gas was $3 and unemployment was 5% and the president has failed the American people, don't they have a right to say that this president has failed the American people?
Well, if you want to go into the past, we can talk about the past all you want. The public wants to know about the future. What are you going to do to create jobs, good paying jobs?
Well, what are you
in our
going to do?
Well, as I said, what the president has done has improved the situation from where it may have been.
But the fact is that Congress has been in session since January and has done basically nothing.
Well, you can talk to Mr. Boehner about that.
So it's all their fault. It's not your fault.
Well, no, I mean, they set the agenda. We have said every day that they're there. Another day goes by and there isn't a jobs agenda or a jobs bill that has come to the floor. But again, it's about how we can work together to go forward. These issues are bigger than politics. They're bigger than elections.
Well,
it's about the country that we will live in. And what you'll see in the election as we go forward is one vision of America that's encompassed in the Republican budget plan that abolishes Medicare, that makes college almost unaffordable for nearly 10 million young people in our country, that takes us deeper into debt and does not create jobs. Or you can talk about an agenda that is about making it America, investing in education, innovation, and the rest, and that's what campaigns are about. But I completely agree with you. 5 months of this new Congress, we haven't seen a jobs agenda come forth from the Republicans.
Do you think you're any closer to coming some kind of agreement with the Republicans on anything right now than say you were in January?
Well, I would certainly hope so, because
where would that be?
Well, where it has to be, and then we can work back from there. Where it has to be, and what the American people want from us. You keep going back to 05 and this and that, and you want me to respond to that, and I respond.
I'm asking you about now.
Yeah, no, but you went back to 05. So
well, yes.
People don't want to hear about 05. They want to hear about the future, and as you know,
I think they want to hear about the now. I think they want to hear about the now. I think they want to know, why aren't you doing anything now? I mean, we keep talking about, well, we don't want to talk about the past. We got to talk about the future. But in the meantime, in between time, nothing is getting done. Nobody's agreeing with anybody on anything.
I understand that. So we're not in the majority in the House. And so you're saying to me, why haven't we brought something to the floor that create jobs? I think that's a better question asked to the Republicans, because they control the agenda. But what we do have to do, and we can engineer back from there, we must not default on our loan, so we're going to have to raise the debt limit.
Moody's bond rating service warned this week that America's credit rating can be downgraded if a deal on the debt ceiling is not reached in a matter of weeks. Could you come to an agreement with the Republicans on debt reduction if they took Medicare off the table?
There is a bipartisan discussion going on that is civil and constructive, and that they've come to some areas where they can possibly reach agreement, but that nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to. But I welcome this line of questioning, because this is a place where we are looking to how we go forward with a sound fiscal policy to reduce the deficit, and I could never support any arrangement that reduced benefits for Medicare.
All right,
absolutely not.
Let me ask you a little bit about Medicare. Obviously, as we all know, the House Republicans want to replace it with government-subsidized private insurance. Can Democrats win in 2012 by just saying no to that?
I think the party is going to say to the American people, to the middle class, we want to create jobs, good-paying jobs, so that you can provide for your family. So it's about the middle class, about Medicare. Mm-hmm. No reduction in benefits in Medicare. And it's about make it in America, again, about jobs for the middle class, good-paying jobs for the middle class. I think that is an agenda that can win.
Don't you, let me just interrupt you a minute. Don't you have to, though, give some plan or some idea of how you're going to reform Medicare? Because we all know it can't sustain as it is.
Well, we, in our health care bill, as you probably know, saved $500 billion in Medicare. We have $500 billion in savings there, which we plowed back into improved benefits for seniors in terms of prescription drugs. But even more important than that, we made it stable for about 10 years into the added 10 years of solvency into the future. That was a big start. The Republicans want to overturn that. That's one of the fights that we are having, because we want to have those savings to keep Medicare solvent.
Is what you're telling me you've already done what needs to be done to Medicare?
Well, I think that we can give the Secretary of HHS the power to renegotiate for lower prices. That would save billions and billions and billions of dollars. I think that any fraud that is associated with Medicare has to be addressed, but that's already a given. We didn't prevail in the bill on negotiating for lower prices, but that's a very important place to go to do that. So if you're talking about lowering the cost, what ideas do people have? We have some. If you're talking about reducing the benefits, that's a non-starter.
Well, you've got some interesting days and weeks and months ahead of you,
Yes.
Ms. Pelosi. We always enjoy having you here. And we'll be back in a moment with some final thoughts.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We spoke with her just after the conclusion of public impeachment hearings Friday. Our conversation started with President Trump's real-time tweet about Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. Why do you think he was tweeting about her?
Well, he made a mistake, and he knows her strength, and he was trying to undermine it. Of course, presidents appoint ambassadors, but people don't insult people, especially when they're giving testimony before the Congress of the United States. I think even his most ardent supporters have to honestly admit this was the wrong thing for the president to do.
The White House said it was just his opinion. He wasn't trying to intimidate. What do you think?
But the president and perhaps some at the White House have to know that the words of the president weigh a ton. They are very significant, and he should not frivolously throw out insults. But that's what he does. I think part of it is his own insecurity as an imposter. I think he knows full well that he's in that office way over his head, and so he has to diminish everyone else.
Do you think that was witness intimidation in your book?
I haven't had a lot of time to pay attention to the president's tweets and the legal implications of them. I just think it was totally wrong and inappropriate and typical of the president.
When you tweeted today, you said Ambassador Yovanovitch was viciously smeared by Trump allies, removed from her post, and then threatened by the president. What part of that amounts to an impeachable offense or a crime?
Well, there are many things that the president does that are completely out of the question that are not impeachable, and they're about the election. But when it comes to violating the Constitution of the United States, as he undermines our national security, jeopardizes the integrity of our elections, dishonors his own oath of office, that's about impeachment.
So the Constitution defines an impeachable offense as treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yes.
What do you think applies to this case?
We are unfolding the facts. That's what an inquiry is about.
You used the term bribery.
Yeah, I was translating from the Latin. That was in the context of e pluribus unum, for many one, and so I said for many one, quid pro quo, bribery. Yeah, that's what that is. Mm-hmm.
So, but do you expect that to be one of the articles?
I have no idea. There's not even a decision made to impeach the president. Mm-hmm. This is a finding of fact, unfolding of the truth, and then a decision will be made. And that is a decision that goes beyond me.
Well, you point out factually right. That vote has not taken place to proceed necessarily with impeachment. But do you think you'll go through all of this and not vote to impeach the president?
That remains with the facts of the president has information that demonstrates his innocence in all of this, which we haven't seen. His transcript of a phone call is tucked away in a high highly sensitive, compartmentalized intelligence server, so we can't see that. If he has information that is exculpatory, that means X, taking away blame, then we look forward to seeing it.
You think Democrats have had a good week?
Well, I think the American people have had a good week. I think truth has had a good week. I think patriotism has had a good week. And I think the Constitution has got a good week. I don't think the president has had a good week.
Well, Republicans argue here.
You know what? If we could just talk about what we want to do. I really have a real discomfort level of responding to what Republicans say because they are in denial about what has happened in the country. So if you want to ask me about where we're going on this, I'm happy to respond to that. But I find it a waste of my time and yours to just be talking about what Republicans say.
Well, I want to just let you respond, though, to the argument that's being made in messaging by Republicans here, that the grounds for the impeachment...
Let it stand. Let their argument stand, because it's on such quicksand that I don't even want to have it given any more visibility by my dignifying any of their misrepresentations of what they say. And I say that out of great respect for you, because I respect you as a great journalist, and I'm honored to have this interview with you. But I say to everybody else, I'm not here to talk about what they say, because they're not facing the reality of what is happening to our country. And this is about our democracy that is at risk with this president in the White House.
So Chairman Schiff has said he learned of the whistleblower complaint September 9th. The aid was released days later, the military aid that's in question here. Do you see a connection there?
Of course, the president wasn't going to the Republicans like to say, if you want to talk about them, oh, it doesn't matter, the aid was released. No, the whistle was blown. The whistle was blown, and that was blown long before we heard about it. Don't forget that in between all of that came the Inspector General, an Inspector General appointed by President Trump. And the Inspector General said that this was of urgent concern. And so that is what intervened.
Can you help walk the American people through what happens next? We have another week of hearings.
Yes.
There'll be an intelligence report written up. And then what? Does the president get, as he says, to confront his accuser or get due process?
What do you mean confront his accuser? Confront the whistleblower?
Presumably,
Well,
that's what
I
it means.
will make sure he does not intimidate the whistleblower. So the president could come right before the committee and speak all the truth that he wants if he wants to.
You don't expect him to
if he
do
wants
that.
to take the oath of office, or he could do it in writing. He has every opportunity to present his case. But it's really a sad thing. I mean, what the president did was so much worse than even what Richard Nixon did. But at some point, Richard Nixon cared about the country enough to recognize that this could not continue. The Intelligence Committee is leading this part of the inquiry. There are other depositions that are being taken by more committees. So some of the depositions will continue, and then what takes place in the intelligence public will continue for another week. I don't know how much longer. I guess it depends on how many more witnesses they have. That's up to the committee. I don't guide that. That's up to the committee.
You expect that to be wrapped up before the end of the year?
I have no idea. Again, I don't have any
No timetable for that.
No, I mean, it is self-evident that we have open hearings for the next week. I don't know if there are any beyond that. Then we're out for Thanksgiving. Doesn't mean depositions couldn't be taken during that time. And then when we come back, by then maybe a decision, or maybe they have more hearings. And then I have 6 committees who have been working on all of this, and those 6 chairmen have been very involved in how we will proceed.
Does that mean that'll be potentially included in an impeachment, that you might broaden this beyond the issue related to Ukraine?
Well, that's not up to me. That's what the facts will determine. We're also proceeding in the courts. And this week we had another powerful decision by a court. Now the president is appealing it to the Supreme Court that the president should release his financial documents. We've won all of the cases in the court on this. Roger Stone, 7 counts was it that he was found guilty? Manafort is in prison. Michael Cohen, the president's lawyer, is in prison. There's so much wrongdoing attached with all of this. But we have to keep it very precise in terms of the President of the United States and the Constitution of the United States. And that is what this is about. And it's very serious. And none of us came here to impeach a president. This is very sad. At the same time, as I say, we're trying to pass a trade bill, pass our appropriations bills, Voting Rights Act, whether it's background checks, climate action now, equal pay for equal work, raising the minimum wage, all of the issues that we're working on for the good of the American people. So this isn't, while this is a concentration of our conversation here, it's not what we do in a day.
You met with the Treasury Secretary this week, and he said the White House has no intention of allowing another government shutdown.
Agreed. We're all in agreement.
Are you confident you can avoid one?
Well, let us hope. Left to their own devices, the appropriators can avoid that.
Does that mean Democrats will provide funding for the border wall?
No. No, we have well over $1 trillion worth of decisions to make. I don't know why we would go to that. The president hasn't built any new wall in the whole term of office. I think that his comments about the wall are really an applause line at a rally, but they're not anything that he's serious about.
When will the free trade deal, known as USMCA, be up for a vote?
When we have assurances that worker protections are provided. It's all about enforcement.
You said imminent recently. Does
Yeah,
that
well,
mean...
imminent. Well, we're a long way from where we started, but I don't have a date when it'll come up because it cannot be any sooner than the trade representative agrees to the proper enforcement, so that our workers really do get a better deal than they have in NAFTA.
What is it like for you to go toe-to-toe with President Trump?
Sad, you know, as I say, none of us come here to impeach a president, and when a new president is elected, we wish that president success and hope that we can work together and find common ground. And I thought maybe we could on infrastructure, and I'm still hopeful. I thought we could on reducing the cost of prescription drugs, and I'm still hopeful. I had hoped that he would want it to be able to find some common ground. It's not a president who believes in governance. I've worked with President Bush before, and we did many things, passed the biggest energy bill in the history of the country, PEPFAR, HIV/AIDS drugs, issues that related to fairness in terms of the tax code for poor people, and we did many things together.
Do you think it's different now, though, because you are so often the only woman in this room? I mean, that iconic photo of you after that recent clash at the White House with you standing up.
I was largely the only woman in the room when President Bush was president as well, but President Bush believed in governance, so you could find common ground. But if you don't believe that in governance, then there's hardly any way to negotiate a solution. This is a very strange situation. 24th of September was when I called for a fuller expansion. The inquiry was going on, but to proceed with the inquiry, and that kind of changed our communication until that day in the room when I said, all roads, Mr. President, with you lead to Putin. Whether it's giving them a stronger foothold in the Middle East by what you did with Turkey and Syria, or what you did by withholding withholding aid to military assistance voted by Congress to Ukraine to the benefit of Putin. 11,000, more like 13,000 by now, Ukrainians have died at the hands of the Russians. They needed that military aid. And with his disparaging remarks about NATO and questioning our commitment to NATO, that's to Putin's advantage. So we do have, shall we say, a candid relationship.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Tomorrow marks 4 years since the attack on the U.S. Capitol, and we spoke to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just a short while ago this morning. She's recovering from a fall last month, and we began by asking her why she thinks so many Americans decided that Donald Trump's support for the rioters in 2020 should not disqualify him from a second term as president?
I wouldn't say that the American people disregarded this. They just had a different view as to what was in their interest economically and the rest. So I don't call this a disregard of January 6th. I just call it something that they saw in their interest economically.
But I mean, even just last night at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump was screening a documentary about the 2020 election, claiming his win and trying to talk about the legal challenges he had. There seems to be a continued effort to claim that he won in 2020.
It's really sad. It really is sad. And I don't know about the film that he had and the rest, but it's almost sick that he would be thinking that in 2020. He's won the election now. Mm-hmm. That will be clear. That will be clear. And tomorrow he will be clearly, we will be accepting the results of the Electoral College. So he should be triumphant about that. But to be still trying to fight a fight that he knows he lost is really sad.
You know, the president-elect has said that in the first 9 minutes of his new term, he will pardon many of those who participated in January 6th. He said he'll look at it a case-by-case basis. But in looking back at what happened 4 years ago, there are recordings, there's video evidence of what happened. It is personal for you. Some of these writers in your office chanting your name. Yeah. One of the defendants, we were looking for Nancy to shoot her in the friggin' brain, but we didn't find her. For you, this is personal. So when you hear about pardons, do you think the nonviolent attackers deserve to be pardoned?
The nonviolent, I think that's a violent attacker with the intention.
The violence itself.
Yeah.
The violent language, you think? The
violent language, yes, the intention. And, of course, the intention to attack the Vice President of the United States. Now, it didn't end that day. As you know, he called out to these people to continue their violence. My husband being a victim of all of that. And he still has injuries from that attack, so it just goes on and on. It isn't something that happens and then it's over. No, once you are attacked, you have consequences that continue. So I don't, it's really a strange person who's going to be president of the United States who thinks that it's okay to pardon people who are engaged in an attack. But let's do this. Let's just say, okay, to the American people, this is what this is about. Do not be conned by the denial of the election of 2020. And why would he be saying that? Mm-hmm. But he is. And then on top of that, the denial of what happened on January 6th.
But some of these 1,600 defendants here were really only charged with trespassing. And when you look at the profiles, the University of Chicago did a study. Half of those who broke into the Capitol were white-collar workers. They were small business owners. Didn't necessarily have a criminal record. When you look at that profile, you said intention. It was the intention itself you think that needs to be considered, more so than the crime, that it casts the crime itself of trespassing in a different light for you.
Well, the president said he would go on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
So I assume that some of those people may not have engaged in the violent activities that some of the others did. Look at this beautiful Capitol, the dome built by Lincoln. Under Lincoln's leadership during the Civil War, they said, don't build the dome. it takes too much steel and manpower, they said, from the war effort. And he said, no, I have to show the resilience of America. And then under that dome, you saw flags, the flags that, just horrible flags under the dome of Lincoln. And so it was a tragedy, and we cannot be in denial about what it was. If the president's going to go on a case-by-case basis, I hope he does. And maybe
Trespassers, you would be comfortable with pardoning?
Well, it depends on how they define what that is. But but I know that some of that encouragement and then the follow-up that so many people were threatened, including me, and to my home, looking for me and finding my husband, and as I say, who still suffers from head injuries on that day. So these things don't just happen and go away when you have a head injury.
Right.
But anyway, to see the threat to so many people in elective office, going beyond me, but so many people in elective office, it shouldn't be a threat to your family that you have chosen to do public service.
You wrote in your book about that 2022 attack on your husband. And you said your daughter told you she had known what you were signing up for. She would never have given you her blessing to run for office in the first place. Do you think that this threat of domestic violent extremism is having a chilling effect on new talent and anyone running for office?
Well, I certainly hope not. But over the years, when I was encouraging people to run for office, especially women, they would say, we could never take the abuse that you take. And that was really just abuse. It wasn't physical. It was criticism and the rest of that. And we don't want our children subjected to that. And yes, I do think it will have a negative impact on people running for public office. Just, in other words, if you're a mom and they go after you as a mom, and your child comes home crying from school because somebody said a negative thing because they saw it on TV, that the other side said something bad about you, you might not run for office.
So you think it will discourage particularly women?
Particularly women.
From running?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I know that it has, but I hope that it will not, that we will shine a bright light on this and just say, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. See, for women, women are known to be more, shall we say, ethical than men. And so when they go after women candidates, they go after their ethics. And they'll say this, that, and the other thing. And then the child comes home from school crying because somebody said a bad thing about mom on TV. And nobody wants that. So hopefully the bright light shining on that will reduce that. But I think that women have proven that they are more ethical, and that they are, well, maybe they're not more ethical, they're all ethical, but that they can withstand that criticism.
And you can see more of our conversation with Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi on our website and our YouTube page.